reflect back on his childhood and places where he was raised and places which he was brought up, realizing that from these basic settlements and these basic, what we considered poverty, that we have been able to accomplish things in life that we never realized would be possible. Now this is the old Bob Freeman house, that with some additions, but this is the house leading into Parrot Hill, where our family was basically raised, where we were brought up under the guidance of a Christian father and mother and aunts and uncles, and most of them preachers and leaders in the community. And from these basic roots, the Reverend Bob Freeman lived here with his wife and his mother-in-law. And they were good neighbors, and they were good, honest people. There was a vineyard down in this area at that time where we were always liked to come up, and they would tell us go out and pick grapes. And it seemed like the grapes were as big as oranges at that time. So this is the Bob Freeman house. This is the house road going down to Parrot Hill. This is been a new road built this time. This is the road that we used to travel as kids, going back and forth to school, and walking these roads. And in the 1936 snow, the snow was drifted to the banks on these roads that you can see, and was level all the way across. And we had to crawl over those snow drifts to keep from sinking down in them and miring up. So this is the road leading down to Parrot Hill. Now as we're going down the hill, we'll continue to see familiar spots, and realizing that in our days of modernization, it's almost impossible to realize that we traveled this road, and we walked back and forth to school, and were considered a poorer class of people. But how lucky we were, because our father always had a job, and he was able to supply the family, and there was 5 boys and 5 girls, and of which there's 4 boys and 4 girls still living. And so we're going down the hill now, and we'll be seeing some more pictures later. This is a newer house that's been constructed. Now this is just on top of the hill, just before you top the top of the hill, going down into Parrot Hill. It sits right on top of the hill. And I didn't realize this house was here myself. But it's been newly constructed just on top of Parrot Hill as you go down in towards where the house is. Of course, this road is not used anymore as such, but I believe, this is the old road, and I believe I'll be able to walk off down this road, although it'd be impossible to drive a car at this time. But this is looking down towards Parrot Hill, from where you cross the top of the hill and start down where the red clay used to be, where it was so slick and almost impossible to get up and down after rain. So again, this is looking down toward the Parrot Hill home where we were raised. This is the old barn that was here when we were here. We grew up here. You can still see the upstairs where we used to play as kids, and the barnyard where the cow kicked Mama plumb out from under the barn one day, and Papa sold the cow. He found Mama sitting out under the barnyard where the cow kicked her completely out of the barn. But many happy childhood days were spent in and around this old barn. I remember the papa one time I had a banty hen, and she sat in the barn, and he brought a goose egg home and put under the banty hen, and it was just about as big as the banty hen. And I was really excited because I thought that hen had laid the egg, and it was almost as big as she was. But he was continually playing tricks on us as kids. And this is the old barn. There still stands as it did when we lived here. You can see the top of the house down on Parrot Hill, very much as it was when we lived here. Of course, there's been a great deal of improvements. This Hensley boy bought the place, and he's improved a great deal. But basically, if you look at it from this position, you can see that it's just about the same as it was when we were here a few years ago. So we're looking down now at the house. Now we're going to look up the hill towards Jim Wardop's. We used to sit on the top of this hill and imagine what we would be when we grew up. And really, I guess at that time we never really thought about ever leaving this hill. We as a family drifted out over the years and have drifted here and there and have been able to make a good living. And Papa always said that one of the things he prayed that his kids would be able to make a living on their own, and we've been fortunate, and all of us have been able to accomplish just that. So this is where we got our basic principles of life and grew up as a family. We'll continue on down now toward the house and on toward the river. Here's where the spring was. Here's where we carried our water from. The signs of the spring is still here, and it's only a short distance from the house, and here where we got our water. And you never had to worry about freezing because, you know, a good spring never did freeze. And this is our source of water for the house, which, as you can see, is only a short distance up the road from here. And as you can see again, it's basically the same house that was when we lived here, except the additions have been added by the present owner. You can see a bathtub. It still contains water coming from the spring that we used to drink out of, and it's being used as watering trough. It sits over right just below the spring, and I can hear the water running into it even now. It's running over on the lower side. So the spring still exists, and it appears to be a bowl spring. Whole basement that's set outside the house, and this is the playhouse that Papa built for Ruth, and it's been put over the top of a well house, and this is the old well house, and this is the hillside that we used to use for garden and pasture, and you can still see it's been used for the same. There again is the old barn, and you're looking toward the top of the hill at the Jim Wardop house. The boy has maintained the house in beautiful condition, and it's still a lovely place to live in. This is the field at the back of the house that we used to pick up rock off of. And again, this is a picture of the house taken from the back side. We're going around down towards the river now. We're looking down toward the river from out where the orchard used to be. I had walked out here in the orchard to see if any of the trees were still here, but apparently over the years with the clearing of the land, these trees are no longer here. But you remember how there used to be rocks on these fields, and every year we would have to pick them up. But these guys sowed down now and pasturing it in better condition than it was when we tried to farm with what meager tools that we had at that time. I remember one time that Luther went over and borrowed a mule off of Jack Reed, and he got in a hurry to leave that evening and sent me home with the mule way over in Elbow Holler. And I'd never driven a mule, and Jack Reed said it was a wonder that this mule hadn't run away with me, because he said he'd run at the drop of a hat, but fortunately he went home for me. We're now looking over the hill where you first come inside the French Broad River from the field down below the house. William sat one time on the hill above the house and painted a picture of this part of the river here with the train coming up the tracks. It was almost a professional picture. I suppose somewhere he has this picture in his home, but it was really a good offhand drawing of this area of the river. And really, I hope that nobody ain't around that thinks I'm crazy talking to myself, but I'm trying to document where we are. And as you can see, we're just looking over into the French Broad River. Now, of course, back over in here is sandy bottoms, and all the way back in towards the area of sandy bottoms. So this is the river that we swam in and fished in and played in. Papa used to bring us down here and we'd swim, and I can remember Papa in his long handle underwear diving in the water, and it only seems like yesterday, but you know, it's been several years ago. But we're fortunate this morning to be able to go over and look at it and see the beautiful flowers that's blooming in nature, and what a wonderful country God has provided for us to live in. Now, believe it or not, this is the path that we used to drag coal up from railroad tracks. At that time, there was a great deal of coal hauled by train, and it was in huge chunks, lots of it. And it would fall off, and the hobos would throw it off. And Mama and us kids would go down to the railroad track and drag coal in sacks back up this hill here and provide enough coal and fuel for the winter. And we'd drag a sack up and hide it and come back and get it later on. And it tickled us to death, you know. If you found a chunk as big as your head, and if you were happen to be at the tracks at night, camping or fishing, well, you'd have to put your fire out, or they would hobos. There was hobos all over the trains, and they would throw coal at you, and so you couldn't have any light. And if you hollered at them during the day, well, they would just practically unload a car for you. So we got fuel from this area, and carried it from railroad tracks up this path to the house, and provided part of the fuel for us to burn during the wintertime. Coming up over the mountain, and you can see it's still in the fog as we look back toward the house again from the trail that I was describing to you, and back toward the hill at the Jim Ward Appeal. Again, this is the trail that we used to travel over and bring our coal. Now, I can just walk over this hill up this path this morning, and I wonder if Margaret and Lila Mae and Kay and we could all drag coal back up this hill again like we once did. Basically, this is the same path. I mean, it's not been disturbed over the years. Of course, some timber has been cut off and things like that, but I can recognize the landmarks even as I travel down this path this morning and look at it. And it's amazing that we existed and lived and were comfortable. Of course, we didn't know any better, you know, so it really didn't amount to a whole lot at that time. But I'm thankful for the privilege of being able to live in a place like this and still undisturbed by man itself and still part of nature. The entrance at the path going up the hill. You can see there's not much of a path there, but it's open all the way up. It surprised me, really. So I'm standing on the railroad track now, looking down the railroad in the direction of Sandy Bottoms. We walked this road many a time and have fellowshipped and talked and laughed, but one of the worst whippings I ever got was for slipping off one Sunday evening, me and Junior and Harold Reeves, coming down here, and Papa met us in the elbow hollering. You talk about switching, but I got it. But because he told us never to go about the railroad tracks. So we're looking towards Sandy Bottom. Now I'm turning and we're looking towards Marshall. Used to be a passenger train run up and down here every few hours. People could catch it most anywhere by flagging it down for a quarter and riding into Marshall or Barnard. But now they go so fast you can't even see them. Us boys used to grease this track right through here. You see, this is upgrade. And the old steam engines could hardly make it anyway. And we, on Sunday evening, our main amusement was greasing these tracks with soap or with grease off of the track. And the trains would hit it, and they would stand there and spin. And I'm sure the engineers would cuss until they burnt the grease off of the railroad tracks. And then they could go on. But that was our main form of amusement, much to the dismay, I'm sure, of the engineers and the railroad people. But you know, we lived, they lived, so I guess it was all in, you know, in the plan of things. This is the branch that comes down out of the elbow holler. Now I've drunk a many a time out of this water right here. Of course, now they say, now Lord, this water will kill you and this and that and the other. But I've laid down many times and moved the lizards and things back out of the way and drunk out of this stream here. And it was about as cold as any water you could have at all. And one time during a storm, we'll move on. I was going to show you, there's a culvert goes under this river here, and one time during the storm we got back under that culvert, now realizing they could flood it, you know, but the Lord looked after us. I run in a bee's nest right there and got stung, so I can't show you the culvert. Papa used to bring us down here. We swam along in this vicinity. There used to be a beach along here, as we would call it, and we would swim in this area.